The Greeks and Romans were firm believers in ghosts. In both cultures, there are stories about the visitations of apparitions to different people, and these ghosts often warn the person against something or pass on a message. The Underworld is the home of the dead in Greek mythology, and there are many apparitions that could be described as shades or ghosts. The ancient peoples believed that once your soul or spirit had left your body, Hermes, the messenger god, would conduct your soul to the Underworld. There, you were faced with the river Styx, which you had to cross in order to get to the Underworld on the other side. This could only be done by paying the ferryman Charon, who would row you across for a fee. It was, therefore, very important to have a proper burial in the ancient world, as this would determine whether you could move on to the afterlife or be stuck in a sort of purgatory. Coins were placed on the eyes or in the mouth of the corpse before it was burnt on a pyre, so that Charon could be paid for his duty. Sometimes a honey cake was also placed with the deceased, so that Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guarded the underworld, could be appeased. When certain heroes go down to the underworld, the first thing they encounter is the shore of the river Styx, teeming with ghosts of the dead who can't get to the other side of the river and to the underworld where they belong because they did not have a proper burial. In some of the earliest literature we have, such as the epic poems of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, and the epic poem of Virgil, the Aeneid, ghosts sometimes visit the epic heroes. The appearance of these apparitions usually play quite a key role in the storyline. In the Aeneid, Hector appears to Aeneas to tell him to flee Troy and start the Trojan race elsewhere on the night that Troy is finally penetrated by the Greeks. He also tells him that the last hope for Troy died when he died, as Hector was the only person who could save their city. Hector appears to Aeneas as he looked after he was dragged around the walls of Troy by Achilles after Achilles had killed him. So his face was all torn up and battered, a pretty scary sight. Though Aeneas initially ignores the advice given by Hector, he does eventually realise that Hector was the only hero who could have saved Troy and decides to flee with a few survivors. In the Odyssey, Odysseus must talk to the ghost of Tiresias, a blind prophet, who can tell him his destiny. To do this, he had to visit the underworld to perform a ritual where prayers had to be said and invocations made over a trench of sheep's blood. Once the trench was filled with this blood, many ghosts came swarming up which Odysseus then had to fend off. Homer describes brides, unmarried youths, old men, unhappy girls, and a great mass of warriors who had fallen in battle with their wounds still open on their bodies. But eventually Tiresias, the blind prophet, comes forward and drinks the blood of the sheep so he can make a prophecy for Odysseus. If you want a good ghost story though, a Roman writer called Pliny the Younger gives us a brilliant tale in letter 27 of book 7 of his published letters. Among other ghost stories that are similar to the ones described in Homer and Virgil, we get a great story of a ghost that haunts an old abandoned mansion. In this tale, the ghost of an old man with an emaciated and filthy face and a long beard walks about the mansion with rattling chains about his wrists and legs. This ghost was finally put to rest when a philosopher bought the house and stayed up one night waiting for the ghost. At length, he heard the rattling of chains and the dragging of the manacles along the floor. The ghost appeared at the door and beckoned to him. He followed the apparition into the courtyard of the house, where it disappeared. Marking the spot where the spirit left him, he ordered his servants to dig up this patch of ground where they found a skeleton with chains about its legs and wrists. The philosopher gave the skeleton a good burial and the ghost never returned.